This is a Dutch testing report tutorial. We make these for providers and patients just to help you understand the report a little bit. These are for educational information only and not to be taken as any sort of medical advice. The results that we're showing on the screen do not belong to a particular patient, so just here to help with the conversation itself. When we're looking at cortisol, we've got a lot of data we can look at. Probably the most important bit of information is looking at the free cortisol over time. So we're looking at 4 different measurements throughout the day, and then what we're going to do is add those all up to give the total of free cortisol throughout the day. So we want to look at this pattern for dysfunction. Overall, the levels here of free cortisol are not low. They're either normal or elevated in this particular case. The patient noted taking glucocorticoids, so it's odd to see, not cortisol levels that aren't low with glucocorticoids, which would typically imply that the glucocorticoid is not at a sufficient dose to suppress cortisol. However, the free cortisol is only 1% of the total. The total production is really better noted by the metabolites of cortisol. And in this case, those are low. Okay, so those kind of go along with glucocorticoid supplementation and suppression, although the free cortisol, not quite so much. So it's a little bit of a complex case, so you're going to want to work through carefully what are they taking, how much are they taking, when did they take it last, and then all of these results to try to make sure you're characterizing well what's going on. So typically with cortisol, you make cortisol in the adrenal gland because the adrenal gland gets stimulated from the brain by a hormone called ACTH, and then the cortisol gets deactivated to cortisone. So it's going back and forth by an enzyme called 11-beta-HSD. Because it circulates as either hormone, the active cortisol or the inactive cortisone, we want to take a look at the daily pattern also of cortisone to kind of confirm what's going on with the pattern, and then those are metabolized to the cortisol and cortisone metabolites. And again, if we add those up, which we call metabolized cortisol, we get an idea of the overall production, which again is low. So the free cortisol is not low, but the metabolites are. So that, again, that might be a little bit odd given what they're taking. It may imply that there's somewhat slowed down cortisol clearance, right? Meaning if the free cortisol itself is not low, but the total of the metabolites and the production is low, maybe the cortisol is not clearing like it's supposed to. Low thyroid, poor liver function, those can be some things that can lead to sluggish cortisol clearance. That might be worth exploring. If you want to look at the overall preference for whether cortisol is being activated and staying in its active form more, or whether the 11-beta-HSD enzyme is more heavily deactivating it, this is really the best marker for that, is which do we have more of, the cortisol metabolites or the cortisone metabolites, and that kind of rounds out the picture. Free cortisol over time, the total of the metabolites to give us an idea of total production, and then any metabolic preference that there may be, and then of course take into account what's going on with the potential glucocorticoid supplementation, because that's an important piece to that as well. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions from the patient perspective, please do see your healthcare provider for those, and we thank you for testing with us.